intake coming from carbs. This, obviously, we want to go toward those vegetables, maybe, starchier vegetables, whole grains, fruits and things like that as our first line. And then we can go toward maybe some of those slightly more processed here and there to balance it out. So like I said below, fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes. Beans and legumes are great because they're a good source of protein, a good source of fiber, and a good source of carbs. So all three of those in one hit. So that's why I love beans and legumes. If you don't eat a lot of beans and you're worried about some of those maybe digestive symptoms, a lot of the time you normally don't get enough fiber in your diet. So by incorporating that amount of fiber, your body's like, whoa, I'm not used to processing this much. So you have to kind of introduce it. One other tip about beans is if you're cooking them from that raw bean, you need to make sure you soak them long enough overnight because there is a toxin component in a lot of beans that if you don't soak it overnight and then dump out that water, that causes a lot of those upset GI symptoms. So if you don't soak them before you cook them, if you're buying just like the raw beans and not canned beans, that's a potential concern. So that's something you need to keep in mind, especially if you're trying to go for the whole food, not canned side of things.
Is that a really bad toxin or does it just cause gas?
It causes gas and a little bit of just upset. If you really don't soak them, and there are certain beans that have a pretty high level, you'll get almost kind of that food poisoning-y feel to it. So I think those are your kidney beans that have it at the highest.
You may have said this, but if you did, I didn't hear it. But if you soak the beans overnight, you will be less gassy.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, so that's definitely a good point to reiterate because it makes a difference and it makes you more likely to want to eat those beans.
Makes you more acceptable in the company.
Yes, exactly. Make sure you soak the beans if you're going to be in company with anyone other than yourself for a little while. Other things like brown rice, quinoa, whole grain bread, and with that, it's another one in moderation. If you're going to eat bread, go whole grain, those nutty, seedy, high fiber breads rather than white or just brown bread. Because even just brown bread doesn't mean whole grain.
I have a question about rice.
Okay.
I love brown rice and wild rice. I like the nutty, chewy flavor.
Yeah.
But rice has gotten very expensive. And I have a bag of white basmati rice that I thought I'm just going to start eating it to use it up.
Yeah.
How bad?
So basically, I get this question a lot, and it's something I kind of go back and forth on, like how big of a difference brown rice, white rice. White rice is a little bit more processed and a little lower in fiber, but it's not necessarily unhealthy for you in moderation. So as long as you're not eating like that white rice at every single meal every day or in like 2 or 3 cup servings every time you eat it, it's nothing I would be too concerned about. I think if you're kind of switching between the two, it's also good for your body to have variety. So sometimes I wouldn't be too concerned about the basmati white rice. I like to vary between brown and white rice as well. Okay, so other things like oats, potatoes, those tend to be some of your better carbs. Potatoes, if they're fried or they're baked but covered in sour cream and cheese and all of those things, not quite as healthy. Or if they're French fries, it's maybe not quite as healthy of a carb as it was when it was just in that plain boiled or baked potato. So carbs, the bad. And I don't like to use the word bad when I talk about food. I really like to say just the not as good, the things you should have less of. So refined processed carbs, simple sugars, cookies, cakes, white breads, sugar, juices, etc. Those are things that should probably be consumed less often and in less amounts. So, if you're going to a birthday party or something and there's cake there, don't say, oh no, sorry, I can't eat cake because that's going to make me fat. I saw a really cool picture with a nice quote on it the other day that says, one bad meal doesn't make you unhealthy, and one good meal doesn't make you healthy. That concept of lifestyle and moderation and balance is what's key. If we're having cake every day or every week even, maybe not the best idea. If we're having it once a month or once every few months at a birthday party or at a restaurant or a celebration or something like that, it's fine. We have to feed our emotional side too sometimes. I like to go over this concept of soul foods is what I like to call them. So sometimes you just need that food for your soul. You need to eat something because it's your favorite taste ever, and you just want to eat it sometimes, because if you completely cut it out, you're going to feel deprived, and when you do get to eat it next time, you're going to eat a ton of it, which is a lot worse for you. So rather, incorporate it here and there once in a while in a nice small serving where you can take a few bites, enjoy the taste of it, and be satisfied with it, and not have to eat half a cake or half a pizza as opposed to one slice. The not so good carbs don't benefit the body as well as the whole grain high fiber carbs. So these refined, processed, simple sugars, we don't get as much of a benefit as we do from the other carbs because, like we were talking about earlier, it gives you that blood sugar spike and drop. So it's still giving us that energy, but it's dropping it really quickly. And our body's just using it so fast, it doesn't have time to really take it in and utilize it and balance it with everything else we're getting into our body. So the only time I really recommend using those intentionally, other than if you just want something with a good taste, is having that, if you have that sugar low or you've had that workout where you just need that quick, simple carb, you have that right away by itself, wait about 15 minutes for it to kick in, and follow it up with a more balanced, high fiber, high protein option. Because if you're in that sugar low setting and you're balancing it with everything else, it's taking too long to get to your body, so it's not going to solve the problem as quickly as your body needs it. So that's why having that simple sugar first in those situations, waiting 15 minutes, and then following it up with protein or something more substantial is a good time to utilize maybe a simple sugar, like juice, 100% not sugar added juice. And so juice is one of those things I recommend maximum 6 to 8 ounces a day, at most. Just because, we're getting some good vitamins and minerals, but we're getting such that quick, simple sugar because the fiber component has been removed from the rest of the fruit, that I say juice in moderation, whole fruit rather. Additionally, any excess, which this accounts for the other carbs as well, but we tend to have more of these ones in excess than the other ones. So in excess, after your body has used these and stored them in the liver and the muscles, so it's used them for our instant needs, then stored them in the liver, and stored them in the muscles, and then any excess on top of that is then what is stored as fat. So our body needs the carbs for those first 3 things, but if we're eating over that, that's when we have to be worried about the fat storage from carbs. So if we have a good balance where our body's using them just for what it needs, we're not going to have that fat laying down. So if you eat a carb and it's a good healthy carb, it's not instantly converting to fat. It's being used for all these other things first. And if you're eating frequently enough, it's not going to need to be stored as fat, because it's going to know I'm going to get what I need in 3 hours, and this is going to do me well for that long, so I don't need to store extra. I'm going to get rid of it. these are ones you need to consume in even more considerate moderation. The ones that you should have once in a while rather than at every meal every day. These also result in shorter satiety and less stable blood sugar control. So like we were talking about, kind of that peak and drop in blood sugar, as well as if you notice you eat like a bowl of cornflakes or those kinds of cereals in the morning, and an hour later you're hungry, it's because it's a simple, easy to digest carbohydrate, and it's spiking and dropping. So if you're gonna have something like that, you want to balance it with your protein and fat, or buy a higher fiber cereal option and also have some nuts or something with it so that it lasts you longer. Okay, so carbs and weight management. Carbs, when they're balanced consistently throughout the day, lead to the best metabolic efficiency, like we talked about earlier. So that leads to weight loss or weight maintenance, depending on what our goals are. Higher fiber carb options are eaten in conjunction with protein and or fat lead to that longer satiety and less want to graze. So if we have enough carbs at our meals and snacks in combination with protein and fat, we're not gonna feel the physical need to go graze. Emotional side of it, we talked about in my last presentation on mindfulness, that's another story. If you're eating for that emotional craving rather than that physical craving, gotta do some more of an internal look, why am I eating and what else can I do to replace that if it's an emotional choice. So low carb diets, that big paleo, keto, all of those buzzwords that you hear out there today, they result in shorter term losses. Like, so the first 6 months, if you can stick to it that whole time, which most people can't, but if you can, you'll see better results in terms of weight loss. But rarely maintainable after the first year. And if you do maintain it, the studies show that in relation to just portion size decreasing, there's no significant difference. So why eliminate carbs and deal with lower energy?
So that would be like an Atkins all meat.
Like the original Atkins, yeah. They've updated Atkins a little bit to more balance. So she said, would that be like an Atkins diet? And so, yeah, so those Atkins diets, a lot of doctors are recommending the low carb route these days. One thing I do like to throw in there, not to bash doctors because they're great at what they do, but they don't study much nutrition in school. So when they're recommending that, a lot of the time they're not thinking about, they're like, well, ketogenic diets now in research are showing short term there aren't as many detrimental effects, but there's nothing showing what happens long term. And our body needs carbs. You can use some of those other sources of energy that are going to slowly process and get to that point where it will still give you the energy you need, but it takes 10 times longer to get there, and your body will kind of feel sluggish and less able to do what it needs to when it needs to do it. For most people, there are exceptions to every case. And take a look at that picture because I love that one too. The picture says, for those of you that are watching online, you mean to tell me that we could have lost weight by eating? And it's a little baby making a face like this. So another thing, like we said, no long-term safety testing has been done. Brain fog, lower energy for many people, and can lead to overconsumption of high fat and less healthy protein choices. So that was that thing we were talking about where, we're cutting carbs so we can eat whatever else we want, right? So a lot of the times people overcompensate with those other options. And the last thing is you really need to take caution, even short term, for patients with osteoporosis, kidney disease, increased LDL cholesterol because our fiber consumption tends to go down, and diabetes. Because these things, by having those higher protein, higher fat diets, can lead to increased stress on your kidneys, increased saturated fat consumption, so those LDLs going up, high